He didn't warm up, didn't stretch, just stood there barefoot at the edge of the mat, wearing a plain black t-shirt and white ghee pants with no belt. A few teenagers laughed. One judge frowned. Someone whispered, "Is he even a real competitor?" But what no one realized, not the crowd, not the reigning champion, not even the head referee, was that the quiet man they were about to underestimate had once served as a black tomb guard. And before that, he belonged to a unit so classified the Army still won't talk about it. He hadn't come to win. He had come to keep a promise. Before we dive into this story, where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. And if you believe that values like honor, courage, and sacrifice still matter, join us in keeping their legacy alive. The gym was alive with energy. Shouts echoed off the high walls. The thud of feet on mats blending with the low hum of conversation from families and folding chairs. Competitors in white GI uniforms stretched, practiced, paced. Coaches called out instructions while judges prepared their scorecards. It was the opening round of the Eastern Regional Karate Invitational. And by all appearances, just another Saturday morning in North Carolina. No one noticed the man who entered late. He walked with quiet steps, shoulders square, posture straight. He wore a plain black t-shirt tucked neatly into white GI pants. No belt, no patches, no team colors. He said nothing as he approached the registration table, only handing over a form and a driver's license, both of which the volunteer scanned without comment. Name, Liam Harper. Division, Adult Men's Advanced. A volunteer pointed him toward the warm-up area, but Liam didn't join the others. He took a seat on a bench near the far wall, away from the crowd, hands folded in his lap, back upright. He watched, not with curiosity or anxiety, but with the same quiet intensity one might find in a man standing post. Across the gym, a man in his late 50s sat with a friend in the stands sipping coffee from a paper cup. He squinted when he noticed Liam and leaned forward slightly. I know that face, he thought, that posture. A year earlier, during a family trip to Washington, D.C., he had visited Arlington National Cemetery. He remembered standing in silence at the tomb of the unknown soldier, watching a soldier in full-dress uniform perform the ceremonial guard duty. For hours, that soldier had moved with precision so perfect it seemed outside of time. Not a wasted step, not a glance off-center. Rain had fallen, light but steady, and the guard had never flinched. That soldier had been Liam Harper. The man wasn't entirely sure until he caught a glimpse of Liam's eyes. Focused, still, watchful. Not like a fighter waiting for a match. Like a guardian waiting for something worth protecting. Back on the mat, the tournament rolled on. Names were called, scores were posted. Some fighters fought hard, others froze. There were cheers, laughter, frustration, pride, and through it all, Liam remained still. He didn't stretch, didn't shadow box, didn't warm up. He simply sat watching quietly as match after match unfolded before him. To most, he looked like a late entry, a man who'd forgotten his belt or was trying his luck. To some, he looked out of place, older than most competitors, quiet to the point of being strange. A few teenagers whispered and laughed, pointing at the man in the corner with no rank on his waist. But Liam didn't seem to hear. He sat with the posture of someone who had stood at attention in the rain, unmoving for hours, who had stood watch, not for applause, but because it was his duty. The first time he stood from the bench, no one noticed. He walked to the side of the mat when his name was finally called. Next match, Men's Advanced Division, Liam Harper versus Carlos Rivera. The judge repeated the name again, louder. Liam stepped forward, bowed slightly, and took his place. People began to look. The black t-shirt, the bare waist, the complete absence of anything flashy. Someone in the crowd chuckled. One of the other fighters muttered, "Looks like we've got another wannabe." But the man in the stands who had seen Liam before didn't laugh. He leaned toward his friend and said low enough for only one person to hear, "That's not a wannabe. That man's a black tomb guard. And black tomb guards don't show up anywhere by accident. They show up when it means something. And whatever this is, it means something." The man who stood across from Liam on the mat, Carlos Rivera, was no slouch. Early 30s, fast, confident, a regional finalist 2 years in a row. He bounced lightly on his toes, bowing with one hand already flexing for movement. He glanced at Liam's waist and smirked. No belt, no school logo, no warm-up. He probably thought he was in for an easy win. The judge gave the signal, and the match began. Carlos stepped in quick, throwing a probing front kick testing the space. Liam didn't move. He didn't flinch, didn't react, not yet. He simply let the kick pass a few inches off center like he'd already calculated it wouldn't land. Carlos circled a little faster now, jabbing in with light punches meant to draw a reaction. Still nothing. Liam's feet stayed planted, but not rigid, just grounded. Then, with a single pivot, he turned his shoulder and shifted left, letting a punch slide past his ribs without contact. No wasted effort, no counterstrike, no flourish. People in the crowd began to take notice. Carlos tried again, this time with a sharp combo. Jab, jab, hook, front kick. Liam stepped backward once, then angled off. Calm, fluid, measured. Every attack missed by inches. The match ended 2 minutes later when Carlos overcommitted and lost his balance. Liam had simply sidestepped at just the right moment and let Carlos's own momentum carry him off the mat. The judge awarded the point and the match was over. Liam bowed and returned to his seat. He hadn't thrown a single strike. He hadn't needed to. There were whispers after that. Some called it luck. Others called it stalling. But a few, especially those who understood what they'd seen, judges, instructors, a couple seasoned competitors, weren't so quick to dismiss him. There was nothing random about the way Liam Harper moved. He moved like a man who had trained in silence, who had spent years refining balance, spacing, awareness. He moved like a soldier. Later that afternoon, the bracket revealed the next matchup, Harper versus Sato. The name alone changed the mood in the room. Hiroshi Sato was the reigning 3-time champion, a national-level competitor from Japan who had relocated to California to train and coach. At 28, he was fast, powerful, ruthless. His reputation wasn't just built on victories, but dominance. He wore a red belt edged with black stripes marking his rank. His GI bore the embroidered crest of a prestigious Tokyo dojo, and when he stepped onto the mat, he bowed with controlled aggression. Someone in the crowd leaned over and said what many were thinking. That guy's going to wipe the floor with the new guy. As the names were announced, Hiroshi glanced at Liam, then at the judges, then back at Liam. No belt? He laughed a short, sharp sound. He walked closer. You are Black Tomb Guard, yes? He asked in accented English, gesturing toward Liam's black t-shirt and military-style haircut. I know you. You stand. You watch. You do not fight. Liam didn't answer. He bowed. Not deeply, just enough. Hiroshi smirked. I respect soldiers, but standing still is not the same as moving forward. He turned his back and jogged to the center of the mat. The judge called them to begin. As they bowed, someone in the crowd chuckled and said, "This won't take long." A teenager nearby whispered, "That guard guy just got lucky last time." And yet a few in the audience watched with something different in their eyes. One man, the same who had seen Liam at Arlington, leaned forward again. He'd seen Hiroshi fight before. He knew the man's speed and fury. But this calm before the storm felt like something else. Liam stepped forward onto the mat. No change in expression, no twitch of muscle, just stillness. A kind of readiness that didn't scream or boast. And when the match began, something shifted in the air. The silence that followed didn't feel like focus. It felt like respect waiting to be earned or challenged or both. The judge dropped his hand. Match, start. Hiroshi didn't hesitate. He surged forward with the sharp precision of a fighter who had done this 1,000 times, leading with a snapping front kick aimed high, followed by a back fist and a spinning hook. All of it executed flawlessly, fast, clean, powerful. But Liam wasn't there. The kick sliced through air. The back fist meant nothing. By the time Hiroshi's heel spun around, Liam had shifted a foot to his right. Barely enough to clear the path. He hadn't retreated. He hadn't blocked. He had simply not been where the attack landed. Hiroshi reset, frowning. It wasn't just that the man had dodged. It was how effortlessly it had happened. No wasted motion, no visible tension. Like he had already seen the move before it was thrown. Hiroshi came again, this time with a different rhythm. A low kick followed by a quick thrust to the torso. Liam turned slightly, let the thrust pass, and stepped off center again. The sound of Hiroshi's GI whipping through air was the only thing anyone could hear. The crowd, which had been murmuring a moment ago, now sat silent. The judge glanced at the scoreboard. Still no points, still no contact, still no sign of aggression from Liam Harper. 3 exchanges in, Hiroshi's smirk was gone. He widened his stance, faked a high shot, then launched a sweeping leg aimed at taking Liam off his feet. Liam didn't jump. He didn't brace. He simply stepped over the sweep as it passed under him, pivoted, and returned to his neutral posture. Hands low, eyes calm, as if he were listening to something no one else could hear. Somewhere near the 3rd row, a veteran martial artist leaned forward, his arms crossed, and said quietly, "That's not evasion. That's discipline. That's control." Hiroshi pressed harder. He began throwing strikes, not just to score, but to prove a point. But each time he advanced, Liam moved with exactly the amount of effort required. Not a step more. No counterattacks, no showmanship, just movement, just presence. To the untrained eye, it might have looked passive. To anyone who truly understood combat, it looked terrifying. Every fighter has a rhythm. Liam didn't follow Hiroshi's, he disrupted it. Unsettled by the lack of response, Hiroshi growled under his breath and began circling. He barked something in Japanese, a mix of frustration and disbelief. He wasn't used to chasing ghosts, and yet that's what Liam felt like. Something just out of reach, just out of control, yet completely in command. Then came the 5th exchange. Hiroshi launched a feint left, then twisted into a flying sidekick with everything behind it. Speed, strength, years of training. It should have landed. Instead, Liam dipped slightly, shifted his weight, and Hiroshi's kick missed by a breath. He landed hard, stumbled slightly, and Liam, for the first time, moved toward him. One step, then another, then he stopped. He didn't strike. He didn't raise his fists. He simply stood there 5-y from the champion, his hands still at his sides, head slightly bowed. The message was clear. You've thrown everything, and I haven't needed to respond. Not yet. In the stands, people leaned forward. Phones stopped recording. The judges whispered to one another. A child tugged his father's sleeve and asked, "Is he winning?" The father didn't answer. He didn't know how, because by every traditional rule, no points scored, no strikes landed. Liam hadn't done anything, and yet somehow it felt like he was in complete control of the match. Hiroshi's chest rose and fell more heavily now. Sweat clung to his brow. His steps were faster, but his timing had started to slip. His precision dulled by doubt. He glanced at the judges, then at Liam. And in that moment he realized something that chilled him more than any opponent ever had. Liam Harper wasn't trying to win. He was waiting for what? No one knew. But whatever it was, it hadn't arrived yet. And when it did, Hiroshi suspected no one in that room would forget it. Hiroshi Sato was sweating now. His breath came faster, shallower. The smooth flow of a seasoned champion had given way to tight, frustrated movements. He wasn't just trying to win anymore. He was trying to land something, anything, and Liam Harper still hadn't thrown a single strike. Each time Hiroshi attacked, Liam moved just enough, leaning, stepping, turning, always in control, always present. It was as if he had mapped the entire match before it began and was simply walking through the script. To the untrained, it looked like nothing was happening. But to the few who had spent decades on the mat, this was the highest form of mastery, control without domination, precision without aggression, power held in reserve. Hiroshi let out a shout and lunged again, leading with a spinning elbow meant to force Liam off balance. Liam pivoted inside the motion, his body barely brushing past Hiroshi's shoulder. And for the first time he raised a hand, not to strike, but to touch. A light tap right on Hiroshi's exposed ribs. The kind of touch that didn't bruise, didn't leave a mark, but left a message. You were open, and I chose not to take advantage. Hiroshi jerked back like he'd been shocked. It wasn't the touch that unnerved him. It was the clarity behind it. The silence in Liam's body. The way it spoke without sound. The match wasn't close. It had never been close. The man across from him wasn't just calm. He was calculating. And Hiroshi was starting to realize he'd walked into something he didn't fully understand. You mock me. he muttered under his breath, his hands clenched. Liam didn't answer. He didn't move. His eyes remained steady. Not angry, not cold, just clear. Hiroshi roared, dropping his stance lower and surged forward for a takedown. He shifted his weight low, using his judo background to drive in at the hips, aiming to get Liam on the ground where strength might finally tip the scale. But it was the exact wrong move. Liam didn't resist. He stepped forward into the pressure, turned his shoulders, and guided Hiroshi's momentum with a subtle shift of weight. It wasn't a throw. It wasn't even a sweep. It was something more elemental. Redirection. Hiroshi's feet tangled beneath him. His upper body lost alignment, and before he could correct it, he was falling forward, fast, face first. He hit the mat with a heavy thud. The room gasped. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence was electric. Hiroshi lay still for a moment, not injured, but stunned. His arms pushed against the mat, his chest rising and falling. Slowly, he sat up and looked around as if trying to piece together what had just happened. The judge hesitated, then signaled the match's end. Liam stood where he had been the entire time, still composed. He hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't celebrated. He hadn't even broken a sweat. Hiroshi stared up at him, breathing hard. "How?" he asked. His voice wasn't angry now. It was something else. Respect, maybe even reverence. Liam extended a hand. Hiroshi looked at it, then took it. The audience didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just watched. Something about the moment demanded silence. And for the first time in his career, Hiroshi bowed. Not just out of courtesy, but humility. He had lost not to power, not to speed, but to something deeper. Mastery without ego, strength without noise. As the two men walked off the mat side by side, people finally began to stir. Conversations restarted, but they were quieter now, more measured, the kind of talk people have when they know they've seen something rare. Liam returned to his bench, sat down exactly as before, and laced his fingers in his lap. A man approached with a clipboard, the tournament coordinator. "That was unexpected," he said, clearly rattled. "You're eligible for the finals, possibly even the title. We'd like to interview you afterward. Maybe do a photo op." Liam shook his head once. "I didn't come for that." The man blinked. "Then why did you come?" Liam looked out across the gym, past the banners, past the rows of chairs, and then finally he spoke. To keep a promise, and that was all he said. Long after the final match was over, after the trophies were handed out and most of the crowd had filed out into the parking lot, Liam Harper still sat quietly near the edge of the mat. The coordinator returned once more, holding a small golden trophy in one hand and a medal in the other. His voice was softer now, respectful. "You didn't stay for the ceremony. You won, Mr. Harper. The judges unanimously awarded the final to you by forfeit. Sato withdrew after your match. Said he had nothing left to prove." Liam looked at the man. His gaze was calm, steady. "I don't need a trophy." The coordinator hesitated, then set the items on the bench beside him. "At least let us take a photo. It's tradition." Liam's voice was low. "I came here for a reason." It wasn't tradition. There was a pause. Then the man asked the question no one else had been brave enough to ask. "Why did you fight?" Liam didn't answer right away. His fingers curled slightly, almost imperceptibly, as if holding something that wasn't there. A rifle, maybe, or a folded flag. Finally, he spoke. "There was a boy I served with, young, smart, fierce when he had to be, but always respectful. He wanted to be a martial artist after his service. Talked about opening a dojo back home in Utah. Taught me kata in the desert when we were between deployments." Liam paused. "He didn't come home." The coordinator's voice softened. "I'm sorry." Liam nodded once. "I promised him if I ever got out I'd do one match. Just one. Not to win, not to fight, just to honor what he believed in. That strength doesn't always mean violence. That quiet doesn't mean weakness. That being underestimated is a kind of freedom." The man stood there a moment longer, then stepped back and left him alone. Near the bleachers, James Sullivan, the same man who had recognized Liam from Arlington, watched everything unfold. He had stayed too, long after others had gone. Something about the stillness of the man at the edge of the mat had made him feel like this day wasn't done. He had seen plenty in his years. tours overseas, lost friends, too many good men gone too soon. But what he saw today stayed with him more than most battles. Not because of the fight, but because of how little it took for Liam Harper to win. There was no pride in his movements, no hunger for attention, only presence, purpose, precision. That night, James wrote down what he had seen. He sent it to a few veterans' forums, a few local news outlets. It didn't go viral. There were no trending hashtags, just a quiet story shared between those who would understand. The kind of story that doesn't need a crowd to matter. A few weeks later, the dojo in Utah, where that young soldier had once trained, held a small memorial seminar in his name. No advertising, no big campaign, just students, teachers, and one folded American flag resting beside the mat. No one knew exactly who arranged for the custom belt embroidered with 2 names, one on each end. But they said the man who delivered it stood for a long time at the back of the room, hands behind his back, never speaking, never interrupting. And when he finally turned to leave, he paused just once and looked at the mat. Then he was gone. He left behind no medal, no autograph, only silence. And those who knew, because not every warrior needs a battlefield. Some just need to be remembered. And some, like Liam Harper, never stopped standing watch even after the mission was over.